Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sharmit podcast. Today I'm joined by another exceptional guest, Swaminathan Vetri, who is joining us all the way from Bengaluru, Bharat. Swami is a lead platform architect, a GitHub star, and a former Microsoft MVP. Over the years, he has architected numerous cloud native solutions on Azure and helped engineering teams to build systems that are scalable, resilient, and ready for the future. So, today in this episode, we will explore his journey from Microsoft MVP to GitHub Star, dive into the nuances of great cloud architecture, and the unique strength of Bengaluru's vibrant tech ecosystem. But before we dive into all of that, I would like to thank Swami for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you
Mhm.
to please initiate the discussion by telling us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amit, for having me in the podcast. Right. Hello, everybody. This is Swami. Uh, I'm from Bangalore, basically. Right. Currently, I work as a lead platform architect for Maersk. I've got about 17 years of experience in the IT industry. I started as an humble software engineer back in 2008. And then, yeah, I've come all the way to the platform architect now. It's been quite a fun ride in Bangalore. Right. And personally, I'm married and then I've got, two kids, two daughters who keeps me busy other than my tech work and other stuff. So that's a quick intro about myself. And then, yeah, maybe we can talk more about my journey and everything during the course of the discussion.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Swami, we can clearly see that from Microsoft MVP to GitHub Star and from a lead platform architect at Maersk, you're consistently contributing for the IT industry in different roles in and by sharing your work as an open source contributor as well. So, what do you think? Like, what's the thread that ties your entire journey together in different all these
Mhm.
kind of different roles?
Okay. I think roles is one part. Keeping that aside, I think what I would suggest anyone is to have a curiosity and the passion for learning new things. I think that's what drives me always, right? I'm kind of a curious guy, not just in tech and any other thing. Also, when it comes in, I need to understand okay, how that certain thing works, and then how this works, how that works, etc. Right? I have this curiosity from the beginning, so that's what is keeping me also, helping me to keep me up to date with all the technology things, whatever is going on in this industry, right? And the next thing is about, I think the other important thread I would say is the community engagements. I think fortunately I got introduced to the community very early in my days of my career. Right, like I said, I started my career in 2008, and in 2011 is when I got introduced to the concept of these meetups. Well, before these platforms like meetups existed, right? So that back then it used to be called user group meets and other things. So I kind of started learning more things outside of work from these kind of community engagements. So I was like an attendee for about 3, 4 years, and then one fine day I thought, okay, maybe I can also start contributing by presenting my knowledge, whatever I have with me. And then I kind of started doing this since 2015, and it's been about 10 years. I've been doing a lot of public speaking, and then I would say a lot of failed. I've also failed in a lot of things. I started my own YouTube channel, and then couldn't really continue, so I kind of failed on that. Then I started my blog, and then I couldn't really continue doing it for long. But yeah, at least I keep trying new things, and then whichever is possible, I'll try to keep going on that front. Right. That's what I
Yeah.
would say.
I would say maybe you think that you failed in those things, but the community knows your effort, right? The impact that you have created through those blogs and those content that you are delivering, and it's the best thing. The people like you who are consistently sharing their knowledge with the community, like they are the actual person like who are creating those community to work with the like-minded people and to provide the knowledge that they can. So that's really very
Yeah.
inspiring. And
Thank you. You're being so kind, Amit.
yeah. And what, Swami, like when you started your journey, so did you face
Mhm.
any part, like, did you find any, what, like, we wanted to know what was the exact moment that sparked your interest to start the knowledge sharing through your community
Mhm.
involvement or through the events that you organize? So, what was that particular moment that sparked your interest into that?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. I need to maybe go down the memory lane now to think about it. So yeah, I think maybe it was somewhere around 2010. Like I said, I started attending these events from 2011, but back in 2010, I used to have a colleague in my team, so who was active in communities at that time itself. Right? And then when we had certain technical issues during the project, I think I was working back then on a .NET based application. I was working on a WPF based to be more specific. Then we had certain queries around it, and then I reached out to him, and then he did on his own exploration, and then he kind of reached out to the community, and then he got the answers the next day. I was very impressed to understand, okay, because until then I was thinking, okay, all the knowledge is either from the documentation or from the team whom you're working with. I didn't know
Mhm.
we can also, get to know more from the community. And there are also people out there who comes out and then, share their knowledge. That's when I thought, okay, maybe, yeah, someday I also need to, learn more and then get some expertise so that I can share it with the other people. That's how it kind of, sparked me to get into this kind of community engagements.
It's great. In fact, like Bangalore, the city like Bangalore is also popular for such events because every weekend you
Yeah,
can find out those platforms,
correct.
those events where you can go and contribute. So that's really
Yeah.
good. And Swami, like you have built, like if we talk about your core expertise, so you have built numerous of cloud native solution on Azure.
Hmm.
So in your view, like what do you think? Like what separates a good cloud architecture from the great one? What is your thought on this?
Hmm. Okay. I think architecture is definitely not simple one, right? And it's not everyone's cup of tea as well, right? And architecture is also full of trade-offs. So I think we all need to acknowledge that fact. So
Mm.
now coming into the difference between good and great, I would say, I think if especially if you talk about Azure architecture, right? There
Yeah.
is this well-architected framework laid out by Azure itself, right? If you try to follow all of those pillars of a well-architected framework, be it a reliability or cost efficiency or security, operational excellence, and things like that, right? That itself would definitely make your architecture much better than the others, right? I can talk about more on each of these itself for an hour together, but then yeah, since it's an shorter discussion, see, for
Yeah.
example, you need to, like I said, identify trade-offs and then what is important to solve the right business problem at hand. That's one of the key things, right? That's how entire architecture is around. It's not about putting together all the five fancy things and then coming up with some sort of an architecture, right? It has to solve the problem first. At the time of solving the problem, what kind of trade-offs you're taking? Are you
Mm.
compromising security over something else? Are you compromising performance over your cost? Right? You need to also know those aspects and then tune one over the other. That's how I would say a good architecture can become a great architecture.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like
And
when
another aspect to look into, sorry,
yeah.
is also to make the architecture more evolutionary. I'm a fan of making an evolutionary architecture. In that sense, you can't wait for a perfect architecture on day one, right? You need to
Mm.
know what are the gaps, and then you need to also have a means to tune those as and when things happen. See, because we can't always build a solution which is scalable for maybe 1 million users on day one, right? But you need to
Mhm.
have those technology and the components or the blocks in place to ensure whenever such a traffic peak happens, how would you scale it? Right. So that's how I call it an evolution architecture, right? So like this is one part is scaling. Like this, there are multiple aspects we need to look into it. So as we try to make more evolutionary architecture, I think that would it also would help you to have a better architecture.
Right. And in fact, like scaling as well as the security, these are the two things that have to like we should pay attention to these things because as you mentioned, like we are not sure like how many users are
Yeah.
going to use at the end. So we have to
Yeah.
plan these all things before time. So what do you think? Like, did you like as you mentioned, and as we all know that there are things that seems to be
Mhm.
very easy the way you have explained it, it looks like it's very simple task, but we or behind on the behind the scene we all know that there are lots of effort that put into these kind of work. So during that kind of work, like maybe we all face challenges, right? So someday like there might be a situation for you where the things are not going in the well or and as unexpected things, right? So at that
Mhm.
time, like how you cope up with those challenges? Like, did you have any particular mentality that you follow during those time when you are dealing with the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, there is no straightforward answer for this. I think we're all humans. Even I'm a normal human. I get emotional sometimes and then I get, frustrated and all. That's true, right. But keeping that aside, what one thing I learned is we need to zoom out sometimes and then see what is really causing this particular problem, right? Sometimes what happens if you go so deep into a specific problem, we might forget about what's happening around you, right? So sometimes I try to, zoom out and then see what could have been causing this particular issue, right? Or what how can I do things differently so that I can come out of this particular vicious loop
Mm.
of sorts, right? So I would say zoom out and then see what else it's contributing to that particular thing, right? That's how you can figure out. Otherwise, like I said, once you are if your head's down into a certain aspect, you'll always think about only that, and then your
Right.
perspective is kind of closed. And also ask for help. That's another thing which I would call out, right? So it's not that you have to solve everything by yourself. Maybe
Mm.
be it irrespective of any kind of engineer in your team, be it entry level, senior engineer, or even expert, whoever it is, right? Because different people bring different perspectives. That's also one
Correct.
thing which I learned out of these community engagements, right? The way you think after a few years is completely different from the way how an entry level engineer thinks. Maybe they would solve the problem in a much faster way, right? So I
Right.
don't shy away from asking for help. When I say when I'm stuck, I kind of reach out to the people to say, hey, you know what, this is what I'm thinking, and I'm get stuck here. Can you help? What's your perspective? And understand their perspective, and that would help you to come out of those kind of challenges.
Correct. And I think this explanation will also help those folks who are into college right now. So they will learn the way community help each other, right? Because when you are working with the
Yeah.
like-minded people, you will find out the solution. Not only the solution, but you will also find the alternatives for that because everyone has worked upon it and they know like what is the best way to approach the problem. So maybe
Yeah.
those who are into college or maybe they are about to start their journey, be active within a community engagement, maybe by
Hmm.
joining such kind of events or workshop because it will help you a lot in the end. So that's the best
Yeah.
advice you share.
Absolutely.
Okay. And now, Swami, we will talk bit about Azure platform as a services, Azure PaaS,
Hmm.
because we all know that there is whenever there is a discussion regarding the cloud and Azure, so we always talk about the PaaS also. So, in your opinion, like what are the most underrated Azure PaaS services that architects
Hmm.
still don't leverage enough? So, did you
Okay.
find any thing that you consider that yes, these are some most underrated things of the services?
Yeah, the underrated. I think if I think about it, maybe two things maybe I can talk about.
Okay.
One is the one it's more from the development perspective. There's something called Azure App Configuration.
Mm-hmm.
So this is mainly to manage your feature flags and the dynamic configurations, right? So especially when you're working in a bigger enterprise or even for the startup for that matter, irrespective of
Yeah.
it, right? You would work with multiple other teams, and then if you are the pace of your team might not match always with the other teams, right? You
Mm,
are
right.
dependent on multiple other teams, right? In such cases, when you build applications, you need to introduce feature flags, right? And then when it comes to features flag, I see a lot of people create custom, feature flag related, setups, or even buy third party feature flag, tools, right? Instead, Azure App Configuration I feel is a much better one, right? It's side outright on out of the box solution basically, right, on Azure. And then it has good integration with a lot of other services, be it app service or be it AKS, and irrespective of multiple, if you're creating a .NET based application or Java based application or SDKs, which can be used to, connect
Mm,
to the app configurations. That's one thing I don't really see a lot of people talk about it or use more. Right, because
correct.
feature flag is also one of, like I said, in your overall architecture design, that's an important component to ensure you can do an accelerated development and deployment of your components, irrespective of how your dependents are working, right? And
Right.
then also from an rollout perspective, it helps. Multiple other benefits are there. So that's one from a dev perspective. And the other thing I can think of from the resiliency perspective is the Azure chaos testing. There is this
Mhm.
service called Azure chaos testing, which helps in performing all these chaos tests. Basically, as they say, what happens when your service is down, or what happens when your database is down? What happens there's a connectivity issue? How do you simulate all of these kind of tests? I mean, these issues when it happens, right? Because unless you simulate some of these and then test and then factor these resiliency as part of your design, your system is not going to be perfect, right? Obviously, when any kind of an peak traffic comes in, or when there is any kind of an outage that happens, be it a disaster in a region or whatever times, right? You need to be prepared for all those. So for those also, I feel Azure chaos testing has a lot of out-of-the-box capabilities, just like using an UI itself, you can configure what are the things you want to bring down and what are the experiments you want to write, and then how do you want to monitor those experiments and outcomes and things like that. I think these two, in my view, are kind of underrated, I would say. I mean, personally, if there are a lot of people who already use it, well and good. I'm just sharing my
Correct.
personal view here, right?
Okay. And if we specifically talk about Azure Kubernetes services, so in your opinion, like what you think, like what are the biggest mistake like you see when you are working with a team when they are adopting the Azure Kubernetes services? And as a leader, as an expert, how do you help them to avoid those common pitfalls?
Okay. So AKS is a beast by itself, right?
Yeah.
First thing is, yeah, we need to understand really why do we want to go to AKS, right? I'll start from there, right? Because there are also other container runtimes available in Azure. Right? Like I said, if you don't have like an proper platform team of sorts to manage the Kubernetes as such, I would not recommend anyone to go with AKS assets. Right? Not because the product is bad or anything. I'm not telling about that, right? Because
Mhm.
Kubernetes comes with its own nuances, and then we need to have the right people to understand those. Be it configuring the Kubernetes, configuring the networking aspects, managing the entire cluster, securing the cluster. A lot of other things comes into picture, right? So first thing is, yeah, do you have an appetite to basically run an AKS, right? And
Right.
yes, assuming if you have that appetite to run it, then there's also a strategy you need to define around how many clusters you want to define, right? It also goes back to the organization structure as well, right? Do you want to create one cluster for the entire org or multiple for the different sub orgs, or even one level go one level down and then identify the clusters? Because every cluster comes with its own maintenance overhead and then management aspects, right? And then once you define that part, then comes the right sizing of the cluster. How do you define what is the right size of your cluster? How many VMs you need in that particular cluster to make that node pool, right? And what
Mm.
kind of nodes do you want to use? Do you want to use an, memory intensive one or a CPU intensive one? What kind of workloads you are going to put into it, right? So you need to identify those aspects and then identify the right node pool and then provision it. And then comes your scaling aspect. How do you make it auto scalable? Right?
Yes.
And then one of the major things I've also noticed is the spot usage of spot nodes. I think Azure has the spot nodes, which kind of gets evicted quite often, depending on the the bandwidth or the usage of the not the usage I would say, with the capacity constraints on Azure side, right? So I've
Mhm.
seen quite a few people use that for production workloads, and then they kind of suffer because it goes down when your entire node goes down. All the workloads in that node goes down, and then by the time you provision a new node and then you get your workloads up and running, it could take some amount of time. Again, going back to the chaos testing, if you're not done a proper chaos testing, then your application will have a lot of outage and downtime experience in it,
Agree.
right? So, see, there's some other things on top of my mind I can talk about, AKS.
Correct. Okay. And another very important term that we usually hear is CI/CD pipelines, right? And maintaining
Mhm.
those things are again a bit challenging. We need expertise to handle those things. So, in your case, like, how do you approach building the CI/CD pipeline that remain maintainable over the years, not just for the few months, but for over the years, because we are not sure like how many users are going to use it and the dependency of it. So, what is your approach
Mhm.
while building the CI/CD pipelines?
Okay, that's another interesting question. So when it comes to CI/CD, what my recommendation or what I've been at least following personally is to have a strategy of what are the things, how does your pipeline look like, right?
Mhm.
Irrespective of the tool chain, what you're going to use. Because typically what happens is we define a strategy corresponding to the tools what is in use currently.
Mm.
Right. For example, maybe back then when I started few years back, Azure DevOps was very predominantly available. So we kind of built everything on Azure DevOps. And then came GitHub Actions. And then we had to transition everything to GitHub Actions. Right.
Yeah.
So one thing what helped is the strategy what we had. So we had a clear list of things what needs to be happening in an individual pipeline. And then we wanted to make everything like codified. Like though you have certain things which can be done in a drag and drop in certain tools, if you kind of use that, then when you move towards pipeline as a code kind of a concept, then it becomes a bit of a challenge,
Mhm.
right? So how as much as possible try to codify your pipeline so that they're also version controlled and then it's all clearly monitored and then managed. That's
Right.
one part. And then like I said, don't have something very tight affiliation to your tool chain which in use which are currently used, because obviously as the enterprise strategy changes or when new tools come into the market, we keep experimenting or changing to new tools. So your pipeline should be kind of, you need to have a plug and play mechanism to swap out individual tools basically. Maybe
Mm.
for example, now you might use a tool A for your code scanning, and then maybe in the later time tool B could come for a code scanning, right? It's
Correct.
a simple example. But still, how well you can change it, then the easiness of change will come in if you're able to centralize some of these as a templatization. Right? For example, let's say with microservice architecture, I think definitely for one solution, there'll be multiple teams that'll be working on it. Be it could be five Scrum teams or six Scrum teams, for example. And each of them would need to build and deploy their microservices. And if you
Mm.
leave these pipelines to each of these teams, then it becomes quite unmanageable. Right? You can imagine, let's say today I'm in Azure DevOps and I want to move to GitHub Action, then every team will need to go and change that, right? So instead, if you
Right.
have a common templates built, and then if you kind of use that as a reference in each of these different teams, then that makes it more scalable. Then you can have one common, maybe a DevOps team or SRE team who can manage it and then update it so that every other development team need not have to bother about those.
Mm.
That's the kind of strategy which I've been following in my team as well, right? It's been about 5 to 6 years we've been managing these kind of CI/CD pipelines. Like I
Correct.
said, has started with Azure DevOps and then transitioned to GitHub Actions, and then we're trying to plug in, play more other GitHub security tools as well into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are some of the go-to advices that anyone can follow in their day-to-day life to make the things easier for them. Because by
Mhm.
following this kind of thing, like you can manage the time as well as the outcome or the desired for the desired output. So that's a great thing that you just shared.
Yeah.
And honestly, Swami, like we know about your contributions, your work as an architect, right? But still, I would
Mhm.
say there are few people who believe that because they usually see architect are often as a diagram people, right? They think that they they have to show some PPTs and they will speak on it.
Mhm.
To you,
Mhm.
like what does real architecture leadership look like in practice? And because why I'm asking this question, because this question will also try will help the listener to understand the actual scenes behind the scene, like they will know about the behind the scene of your role in the work that you guys are doing.
Okay, another very interesting question. I like the word diagram people. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, architect's primary responsibility is to show an architecture diagram and then talk about it. But definitely, there's a lot that goes behind it. I think I
Correct.
also briefly touched upon this in the initial question, which you asked about good architects and great architecture, right? Because architecture is all about trade-offs, I would say, right?
Correct.
So, for you to come up with a trade-off, you need to have multiple perspectives baked in. Right. So first thing is you need to be able to be you need to be open to observe multiple perspectives and then bake it into the architecture and then come up with trade-offs, share the options of pros and cons and things like that. Right. That's
Right.
one thing. But how do you get it? Domain knowledge is what I would say is another important aspect for an architecture, right? Because technically, like I said, you can put all the things together. Okay, you can say I'll use an Azure Functions here. I'll use an Azure maybe an what is that? Open Telemetry SDKs, or I would use an App Insights or whatever things, right? But then what is that business problem you're trying to solve? That's very important, right? You
Right.
need to have a proper domain knowledge about the domain in which you're trying to, say, create a platform or a solution or whatever be it, right? So that you can translate your technical skills into that domain knowledge and then see how you can build a problem. How you can solve the problem, right? And then next comes, let's say if you have a beautiful diagram created, how would you explain the diagram to different people, right? How would you align multiple stakeholders into it, right? That's also another important aspect, I would say, especially if you're working in bigger enterprises. You would definitely talk to architects of your same scale or even senior architects than you, and then you need to go and explain why you have come up with a specific point of view. So that means you also need to be able to influence others with your thoughts and then with your point of views. So I would say influencing people, stakeholder alignment is all another important aspects of architects. Right. And another thing again, I would also say is architects also don't necessarily talk only to technical people, right? You would also
Right.
be like an bridge to the business users to at some point of time. And it wouldn't be appropriate if you go and explain, you know what, I'm going to use an AKS so it can scale up to whatever the X number, etc. They're not going to understand that part.
Right.
So you need to be
Exactly.
able to also translate your technical things into a non-technical people. Right? How does your security work? How does your performance works? Right? They would just need to understand. Okay, I am having maybe 100 users, and how long it's going to take for this 100 users to log in or do X number of things, right? So you
Correct.
need to be able to translate those technical aspects into non-technical to the non-technical teams as well. That's
Correct.
also one of the core, leadership skill, I would say, from an architect perspective. And
Yes.
of course, your team, your technical team engineers, they will have a lot of questions. They'll be more curious. And you also need to be able to, convince them with why you think this is a better way. If you cannot convince, also you need to be open to admit, yeah, maybe I didn't think about those aspects. This is a good input. Take the input and then incorporate it into the architecture. Right. So I think these are some other things I would say, maybe I would say is a must have for the architects who are aspiring to be an architect as well.
Right. And I think with this explanation, you have break down all those myth, those for those people like who believe that architect are just diagram people, because now they know like how much important it is to share the things to the non-technical person also, because you know about the technical thing, but everyone is not aware of that, right? The business will
Yeah,
not, they are not interested to see your technical thing, your code and everything. You have to explain the thing in a very layman
correct.
terminology to them. So that's like
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
exactly architects do.
Yeah. And
Okay.
one other thing I would like to add, maybe before going,
Yeah.
another thing is, let's say you also need to be able to break down the larger vision and then build solutions for that, right?
Right.
Because as an organization, there will be a vision statement only at high level. Now, every time you come up with a problem statement, how is your architecture connected to that vision? Because it's
Correct.
easy to build something which just works, but then it's difficult to build something that just aligns with the larger organizational vision as well. That's also one of the key aspects of architects, I would say.
correct, and that will also help them to understand the progress, like how much things you have understand and how much things are completed, so that with
Yeah,
this approach, like they can rely that yes, this is something that is going in their favor. That's a good thing.
yeah.
Okay, so Swami, we talked about your professional journey, your expertise, right? But maybe there are few things of your life that no one aware about. So, in your
Mm,
what do you think? Like, what's the one part of your journey that no one ever
mhm.
asked about, but had shaped everything that you have built so far? So, what that thing you believe that is that played a vital role in your journey?
Okay, that's a tricky question. Again, let me think through. Mm, I think one of the things that comes to my mind is when I was very early in the career, maybe just when I started being an engineer in a bigger enterprise. I was fortunate to have some senior engineers who were very supportive in that sense. When I kind of stayed late in the office and then working on certain things, they just sit next to me and then just as a moral support, they were there. And then whenever I had any queries, they were kind of helping. That kind
Mm.
of got into my mind from the initial stage itself. I mean, they didn't have to do that, but they were just doing it just as an moral support, which is something I kind of started carrying forward in my career all these while, right, saying whenever any new member joins and I try to tend to say, okay, are they really comfortable in the team or not? Are they are they getting the right attention on what they want? Are they getting the right support, etc., etc., right? So I started kind of following what I was given when I was like an younger engineer. And that also kind of helped me to navigate more towards this community activities, because then what you do in an organization is at a smaller level for your own
Correct.
colleagues, right? But then if you step out of your organization and go and do in community, it also expands your the sphere of influence, as they call it, right? And then yeah, it kind of doubles down basically what you're doing. So that's one thing I would say. And then the other thing, which I think I've been talking about this as well, but still I would like to talk about, is the family support, right?
Yes.
Because that's very, very important for anyone to do any kind of additional work, right? Because I think we all in the IT industry, we all know how intense and then how much of stressful job. It's not just because of timings alone, because of the kind of problems what we solve and the kind of the fast-paced environment and the kind of learning what we need to have continuously. You will mostly be with your work. There's nothing like an
Correct.
disconnected from work of sorts, right? So unless you have a right family support, you wouldn't be really be able to do anything outside of your work. And in that sense, also, I would consider myself fortunate to have good family support. That's why I've been able to continue doing what I'm doing for almost 10 plus years of or so, right?
Right.
So that's also another thing which definitely is very, very important, I would say.
Okay. All right. So now moving ahead, we will talk about another very hot topic nowadays. Everyone is talking about AI. So how do you see AI evolving, and in what ways it is already helping you in your current role as a lead platform architect?
Okay. I think, yeah, we cannot have any discussion without AI in 2025,
Right.
right? Yeah, I think since I've been in the industry for quite some time, I've seen some of these kind of newer technology coming up, right? Like be it the advent of cloud or be it the advent of mobile apps a few decades back, etc. But the kind of impact AI is having is completely different, because when those technologies came in, at least sharing my personal view, right? When those
Mhm.
technologies came in, it was affecting primarily the people who were into the engineering or the software engineering aspects. It, for example, when cloud came in, it was primarily the IT administrators and the IT team were more involved to see, do I want to move from a data center to a cloud of sorts, right? Because from an end user perspective, it was not really making much benefit unless you are building a high scale kind of an application of sorts, right? It was
Right.
the kind of impact it was creating, the technology was creating was on limited audience. Even with the mobile technology for that matter, it came to the end user when the mobile when the with the advent of mobile, actually, right? A lot of
Right.
apps started coming and end users started using it. But now with AI, it kind of become multifold, right?
Hmm.
It is directly touching every individual, right? Whether they are
Um,
technical or non-technical, right? So that is where I see the impact of this technology is a lot more than the others. But now coming into the software engineering side of it, with the advent of the AI, right? I personally use basically Microsoft 365 Copilot to make my day productive, right? So because it has access to all your Teams messages, your emails, and then the Word
Mhm.
documents, PowerPoint, etc., right? So if you are on a Microsoft ecosystem, if all your documents are on SharePoint and then all your recordings and everything is shared in SharePoint, you can easily get yourself up to speed with the things which you missed. So whenever I go on vacation the next day, when I start the day, first thing I do is play back using the recording and then get a summary of all the things what happened or what I missed in the previous day's meetings, etc. Right?
Right.
And then from an architecture perspective, whenever I want to create any sort of a small prototypes of sorts to validate my thought process and then the things, I generally go into GitHub Copilot and then I kind of use that to quickly get my prototypes. And even for that matter, I use Copilot to create the architecture diagrams as well.
Mhm.
Be it you creating a sequence diagram or any sort of a component diagram using Plant2ML and things like that. I use Copilot to give the prompts and then it kind of does a good job for me. Right. And then imbibing AI into the products what I'm building. I'm still not there completely yet. I'm still trying to learn about what are the different, like I said again, going to the problem statement, the kind of product what I'm building in. We are still identifying the right problem statements. See, because in my view, getting an API access for AI, be it an OpenAI or Azure AI or Gemini, is much easier. But what I'm going to
Mhm.
do with that? We are not here to build chatbots, right? We are here to
Right.
solve the right business problem. So identify the right business problem is where I'm kind of stuck now, and then I'm trying to see, okay, which are the right use cases where I can leverage AI, right? Be it a document processing or be it in automating certain, the users' workflows and things like that. So that's where we are trying to, work through to bring in AI into the apps what we're building on.
Mhm. Okay.
But definitely, this is something which we all need to start learning.
Yes.
Otherwise, as they say, we might become obsolete of sorts, right? But yeah, when I wouldn't say it's going to replace everybody, but still, yeah, definitely much. It will be definitely much useful for all of us if we learn it and then if we try to employ it in the right way, be it for
Right.
personal productivity or for our users' productivity, etc.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
this is the best time to start learning AI because it is not only impacting the tech person, but if you are from a non-technical background, it will
correct.
also help you. It is there to help you, not to steal your job. So don't worry about it. Just
Yeah,
start learning and
yeah,
utilizing it. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So Swami, although like there are plenty of things that we can discuss here in this podcast,
Hmm.
but we are short on time. So I just want to take a couple of last questions, I would say, which will
Hmm.
take around 2 minutes. So before we wind up the tech discussion, I think not like Bangalore is a city which is we often heard whenever there is a discussion regarding the tech communities and tech cities, right?
Hmm.
So coming from Bengaluru, the tech capital of Bharat, what's the one unique strength here that you believe that global tech leaders still don't fully understand about the Bengaluru city?
Yeah, there are multiple facets of Bengaluru, right? But I think first thing I would say again is curiosity and the problem-solving mindset. As you
Okay.
can see, be it startups, there are multiple startups that are available in Bangalore, and then they're trying to solve different problems, right? So in the problem-solving mindset as a whole is, I feel it's very good in Bangalore, and sometimes it
Okay.
also puts you in the pressure and makes you, be on top of your toes always, right?
Right.
That is, okay, am I kind of still relevant? Am I really looking at the right problems and things like that? Which is one thing I felt very good here. And then the other thing I would say it's also I feel it's culturally not just for Bangalore, for Indians itself, is we are kind of have a diversity. I would say is at the heart of what we are doing. Right? We always deal with different people from different backgrounds and different
Backgrounds.
cultures and different, be it economic or whatever be it. Right? We always deal with diverse set of people. So I feel naturally we have that mindset to adapt or embrace diversity in anything
Right.
what we do. Right. So, which I found very quite interesting, and which is very much important also in our day-to-day lives to make any decisions. Otherwise, we kind of will be biased if we are thinking on one particular aspect or in one perspective. And getting those diverse perspectives is very important, and I feel Bangalore actually provides that at a
Right.
much easier way here. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so now we will take the last question, and
Mhm.
we just really wanted to know because you are supporting so many community members, right? But we just wanted to know, like, for you, like, who are those key people, or who are those key people in your life who have helped you in your journey? So, who are those
Mhm.
persons?
Okay. I think that's a long list basically, but I would definitely again start with my family. Like I
Yes.
said, family support is very, very important. That's why I keep stressing on that aspect because I know a lot of tech folks as well, right, who are much better, who have a lot of good knowledge in the technology and be it any kind of things, but then due to their constraints of wherever they are in, right? So they are not able to come out and then contribute more. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just talking about
Right.
the practicality here, right?
Right.
So definitely family support is very, very important. That's why I'm trying to stress that aspect, right? And then when I talk about the other people who influenced me, I think one name that comes out first is a mentor who I would still consider as a mentor, and then he was a colleague back then. He's Nish Anil. So he was the one who introduced me to the community. Actually, he currently works for Microsoft as a program manager, right? So back in 2011, he only introduced me to the communities, and I started, like I said, I started being an audience, and then turned into a speaker, and then now like a community leader. So that one thing which he did kind of stuck onto me for a long time. He's one person from a community perspective, and there are quite a few other community folks like Lohit who were there initially in the B.NET. I run multiple groups in Bangalore. Of course, some of the groups are kind of becoming dormant now due to other activities, but still, yeah, for some people in those communities really helped me to get into the leadership aspect as well. And from then professional, from an office and work perspective, I think I'm also quite fortunate to work with a lot of leaders who allowed me to basically work on my own, basically, right? In
Mhm.
that sense, not like doing a lot of micromanagement of sorts, like allow me to take full ownership and then things like that, right? So those also actually helped me a lot to think, because if you have a perspective that you are the one who is trying to make a decision, you will do differently than if you have okay, somebody else will make a decision, I just need to provide my inputs. These two are
Correct.
two different ways to look at the problem, right?
Right.
So if you are put on spot, you will always be on your toes to give the right make the right judgment, right? So I
Correct.
also was fortunate to have a lot of these leaders who backed me with those kind of good support. So I definitely owe a lot to them. I mean, I think the leaders are a lot because like I said, I've been in the industry for 17 years, so I can definitely talk about more people.
Right.
So maybe, yeah. So I'm just calling in general. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Swami, for joining us today in this
hmm
episode and for sharing your expertise with everyone.
hmm Thank you so much, Amit, for having me. I hope I was able to add some value to your talks. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for having me again.
Thank
All
you.
right.